So today we are going to talk about the Philippines. So during this presentation, we are going to introduce the country. Then we're going to present the economic background and business environment. In the second part, we will talk about the election of the new president. In the third part, we will talk about the Manila Water Company and the water industry in the Philippines. In the fourth part, we're going to talk about, we're going to give some recommendations, and then we're going to conclude the subject. So the first signs of life in Philippines go back to 30,000 years ago. During the migration of the Negritos, they came from Sumatra, Malaya, and they went to the islands. In 1521, Ferdinand Magellan conquered the Philippines during his first expedition, and then Lopez de Villalobos did another expedition in 1542. That's what we call the beginning of Spanish colonial era, and the beginning of the Filipinos controlled by the Spanish. After being controlled by Spanish, they've been controlled by Americans, and the independence was granted by the US on the 4th of July 1946. The great majority of people living on the island is Filipinos. The language spoken there are English and Filipino, but we know that it exists 500 other dialects in the country. So we can see on the graphic that Catholic are the majority of people there. Then you're gonna have Muslims, um, and then sort of independent church, Protestant. Um, so today we are going to talk about the Philippines. Um, During this presentation, we first gonna do an introduction. Then we will present the economic background and business environment of the country. In the second part, we will talk about the election of Rodrigo Duterte. In the third part, we will talk about Manila Water Company and the water industry in the Philippines. Um, then we're going to talk about some recommendations that we're going to do, and then we conclude the subject. So the first signs of life in the Philippines go back to 30,000 years ago, when during the migration, when the Negritos have migrated from Sumatra, Malaya to the island. In 1521, the Philippines being conquered by Ferdinand Magellan during his first expedition, and then there was Lopez de Villalobos, who did another expedition in 1542. That's what we call the beginning of Spanish colonial era, when the Filipinos were controlled by the Spanish. After that, the Philippines were controlled by the Americans, and it, their independence was granted by the US on the 4th of July 1946. So about the country, so the great majority of people are Filipinos, so which means they talk English and Filipino, but there is also 500 other dialects on the islands. So about the religion, so we can see that the majority of people are Catholics, and then the second main religion is um, Islam. In terms of education, so the Philippines have modeled they have modeled the American education system, which means they have two kind of school, private and public, and they have four different stages of education. So pre-primary level, primary education, secondary education, and then college. So the country is composed by 5,107 islands, and it is known for its geographic diversity. There is also a tropical climate, which means that there is a lot of natural disasters such as earthquakes and typhoons. Now we're gonna have a look to the economic background and the business environment. So as you can see on the graphic, the economic growth decreases every year, but um, we can say that the Philippines have a good economy thanks to domestic consumption, employment, and politics. So the main factor of Philippine economy is domestic consumption, which represents 70% of PIB. Politics, actually, yeah, during the Benigno mandate, um, that was the highest growth rate in Asia, and external investments was time three. In 2016, Rodrigo Duterte has been elected, but everyone said that he isn't stable and it scares a lot of entrepreneurs and investors. So now the government policy is focused on fighting poverty, social security, unemployment, job creation, infrastructure improvements, and government stability. So the export partner of the countries, the first one is Japan, then you will find United States and China. So the main products of exportation are electric installation and electronic materials, nuclear and vehicles and clothes. About imports now, so the main imports partner are China, United States, and Japan. The main product of exportation are electric installation, electric materials, so it's actually the same than importation. And after being negative for a few years, the trade balance got better with a 12% increase of export and 6% decrease of imports. So the main sector of activity are first, so agriculture, which represent 11% of GDP and 30% of workforce. They are growing rice and coconuts, so it is actually the Philippines are actually the major producer of rice and coconut in the world. There is also minerals with a potential estimated at more than 840 billion of dollars. And the last one is manufacturing industry, which represents 31% of GDP and 16% of working population. So the main industries are industrial foods production, cement production, glass, chemical products, and the services, which represent 57% of GDP and concern more than half of the world population. So now let's talk about the new president. So during June 2016, Rodrigo Duterte is elected as president. Since then, he stopped the relationship with the United States, and actually, this country was one of the main partners of the Philippines. Why? Because the new president wants the American troops to leave the Philippines in order to start negotiating with China, because they want to build an island in the South China Sea. Before then, the two countries used to fight to control this part of the world, but now negotiation became like friendlier. And the new president introduced some members of the Communist Party to the government. The inside policy changed. So in terms of, so he declared a drugs war with death penalty, which been restored since June 2016. And during the past 3 months, 10 people have been executed. In terms of delinquencies, there is a new law saying that parents can be judged for negligence if their child is arrested. It is now forbidden to drink in public areas, and um, the police is not in charge of the law anymore. This is the army now, and so it gives it a lot of power and control. So now we're going to present the industry of water and the Manila Water Company. So in order to place the context, so the country is growing faster than everyone, which means the population is increasing and is expecting to grow by 67% by 2030. So the country owns around 479 billion cubic meters of renewable water per year. Agriculture needs between 83 and 85%. And in 2010, 43% of population has direct access to water in private houses or workplaces. And you will see that in 1997, there was like just around 30% of population. But 61% of people have access to water in urban areas, but there is only 25% in rural areas. So the Manila Water Company has been created in 1997 and started its operation in 2000. So the company is providing water and wastewater services to the population. It is actually the only company in Manila. So its main tasks are to build and maintain the water supply system, wastewater and sanitation management, and network and distribution. So between 1997 and 2015, the company has doubled its customer. It was 3.1 million and now it is 6.3 million. And it decreased the water loss by 52% in 2015. They also replaced 90% of the water network in the Philippines. So as recommendation, we will say that in 1997, there was only 30% of population who had access to drinking water. So that's why the National Water Crisis Act was introduced. It allows low-income people to have access to drinking water. So the government and Manila Water Company made an agreement based on cooperation and partnership between company. There was actually three parts. So company, the government, and community-based organization. So the company is supposed to take care of the infrastructure, but the government will make administrative processes easier between the company and the state organizations. So a new story, yes, but water resources are still a big issue in the Philippines. The waste of water is still huge. Now there is a problem of pollution. So most of land are full of chemicals, and this sector consumes the majority of water supply because it's agriculture. And population is growing too fast, so the Manila Water Company needs to develop its distribution network and find new sources so everyone could finally have access to drinking water. So about the solution, so for Manila Water Company, we suggest that they should develop a recycling process, and the company could build a water treatment plant, even if that kind of process is actually really expensive. It could reduce the water loss. And for the government, we'd say that the government could find another company to distribute drinking water and develop competitiveness and break the monopoly of Manila Water Company. So to conclude, we will say that even if the country has big history, it did well in terms of economic growth, politics, and industries, international trades. Um, the government's change is now a new issue because the president is not really stable and he seems to want to raise barriers between the Philippines and some of their other partners, such as the United States. Concerning Manila Water Company, in few years, the company allowed the majority of population to have access to drinking water. Um, of course, the company wants to improve its infrastructure and reduce the water loss to give everyone access to water and upgrade quality of life on the islands. So thank you for your attention and have a good day.